Welcome back to 3 Minutes. Up next, we have the twisted story of Edmund Kemper, California's most talked about serial killer. But before we hear a few words from Mr. Kemper himself, we're going to give you a brief history of his troubled upbringing. Meredith, over to you.
Before we get to that enthralling interview, let's take a brief look at Kemper's unique upbringing and childhood. Kemper's life changed dramatically when his parents divorced and he was forced to move to Montana with his mother, with whom he had an extremely weak and unhealthy relationship. Although he was extremely bright, he displayed many social abnormalities as well as sociopathic behaviors, for example, fatally stabbing a cat and playing with fire. He was often locked in a basement because his mother had a fear that he would rape his sister, and after running away from home in an attempt to find his father, who had formed a new life and wanted nothing to do with him, he moved in with his paternal grandparents against his wishes. However, in 1964, his grandparents became his first victim. Kemper was then sent to a Tuscadero State Hospital at the age of 15 and remained there for almost 5 years. Unfortunately, his killing career had just begun. And now, back to you, Beatrice.
Thank you, Meredith. Now that you know a little about his unique upbringing, I will share with you some basic information on the various crimes that Kemper has committed. The killing of his grandparents at age 15 was the first, but definitely not the last, of Kemper's many murders. Throughout his career, Kemper has become known as the co-ed killer, with 10 dead people. 5 were young college students, his two grandparents, mother, and lastly his mother's best friend. His stalker days started in May 1972, when he brought back college girls to isolated areas and not only murdered them either by smothering, shooting, or stabbing them, but performed sexual acts, dissected and performed various experiments on their bodies, buried several severed heads in his backyard, and disposed of many of their bodies in ravines, cliffs, and the mountains. Marianne Pesci and Anita Lucchesa were hitchhiking college students that fell victim to this devious man. He choked and stabbed them to death before driving their bodies back to his mom's house, where he not only took pornographic pictures of their bodies, but also tore their bodies apart and had sex with one severed head. He left some remains in the mountains while others were thrown into a gorge. Following these victims, Kemper picked up another hitchhiker, this time a 15-year-old girl named Alko Koo, murdered her, and brought her body back to his mom's house. There he raped, performed experiments on, and dissected her, as well as cut off her head, which he buried in the backyard. Cindy Shaw, the 6th death of his killing career, was treated very similarly to Koo. She was killed, brought back to his mother's house, and dissected before severing her head and burying it in her mother's garden. In February, towards the end of his serial killer career, he picked up 2 women, Rosalind Thorpe and Allison Liu, from the UC Santa Cruz campus, killed, beheaded, and sexually abused their bodies before disposing them off of a seaside cliff. Following these 8 victims, Kemper battered his mother to death with a claw hammer while she was sleeping, beheaded her, had oral sex with her head before using it as a dartboard, as well as cutting out her vocal cords and trying to put them down the garbage disposal. After killing his mother, he invited her best friend over to their house, where he strangled and killed her before taking off in his car. Wow, I don't even know how I got through that. This is one crazy man. Back to you, Meredith.
Edmund Kemper clearly suffers from some serious psychological problems, so now we'll hear from the co-ed killer himself. Up next, the interview you've all been waiting for. You did seem to have a poor relationship with your family. Can you tell us, is there any specific reason you killed your grandparents?
Well, I hated my mother. I've been saying I wanted to kill her since I was 8 years old. I'm not proud of that. But she went through 3 husbands like a hot butter through a knife. I was much closer with my father, but when I ran away from home, I had to face the reality that he didn't want me in his life anymore with his new family, so I was forced to live with my paternal grandparents against my wishes.
You did seem to have a poor relationship with your family. Can you tell us, is there any specific reason you killed your grandparents?
Well, to be honest, I just wanted to know what it felt like to kill my grandma. And I knew my grandpa would be extremely angry with me if he knew I had done it, so I killed him too.
I see. And as a result of these murders, you ended up in a Tuscadero State Hospital. Can you tell us a little about that?
I was there for less than 5 years, and it was a pretty good experience, considering the situation I was in. I befriended my psychologist and even worked as an assistant.
Yes, well, you did spend 5 years there. However, you continued to kill after being released. Do you have anything to say about any of the students you killed?
Most of the time, I would kill after an argument with my mother, but I just kept convincing myself that I wasn't insane, because I was just doing it to make things fit together inside of me.
Well, after the students, you murdered your mother and tried to put her vocal cords in the garbage disposal, right?
It seemed appropriate, seeing as she'd bitched and screamed and yelled at me over so many years. When I got out of the hospital, it was recommended that I never live with her again. Well, that would have been nice, but no one listened.
How do you feel about the sentence you received from the judge at your trial?
I wanted to be put on death row. Instead, I have to spend the rest of my life in prison, so I'm not pleased with the ruling.
Well, we're out of time, but thank you for speaking with us. Beatrice, back to you.
There you have it. The interview you've all been waiting for. And while he might not be happy with his sentence, I'm sure most of you believe it is extremely fair. His next hearing will be in 2012. Let's hope they send him right back to jail so he can't hurt anyone else. I'm Beatrice, and this has been 4 Minutes.
Mr. Kemper, tell us about your relationship with your parents and grandparents. Do you want me to just pause in between everyone?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm gonna kill you both. If I could make a paper airplane, I would make it and throw it at you. Okay. Good thing I don't know how.